Hello everyone! Welcome to use the Wings engine. This tutorial mainly introduces the project modification process after deployment. In the previous tutorial, we have introduced, according to different customer requirements, Wings engine supports project file deployment and deployment file deployment. No matter which deployment method is used, the project modification process after deployment is the same. First, let's introduce the project file deployment method. The project file is combined with Wings engine editor to deploy it. After we export the project file to the customer, the client needs to install Wings engine editor to open the project. After the customer imports the project file, he can also modify the project, including modifying data sources and page content. If there is a need for rework, the customer needs to use the Wings engine editor to export the project, and then send the exported project to us for modification. Similarly, for the deployment file, deployment method, and deployment file, it needs to be deployed with the Wings engine viewer. After we export the deployment file to the customer, the customer needs to install Wings engine to open the project. After the customer imports the deployment file, he cannot modify the content, but he can modify the data source. Replace the data source with a local one to test it. If there is a need for rework and modification, the customer needs to export the project to export the project, and then send the exported and send it to us for modification. Except for the different software used and different file formats, the process is exactly the same. There are 3 points that need special attention. First, after importing the project, the changes made to the project in Wings engine will not affect the locally received files. If you want to send the modified project to others, we need to save the project after modification and then export the new file. For example, suppose this is what the customer received: the project file and deployment file. When the customer imports the project in the editor or Wings engine viewer after importing them, no matter what changes are made, it will not affect these 2 files. So when the customer needs to rework and modify, they cannot send these 2 files to us directly. Instead, they need to re-export. Export the project file or deployment file. Second, after the customer imports the project, if the local data source is replaced, then the project contains the customer's local real data source. When exporting and modifying, be sure to check the Convert to convert dynamic data sources to static ones, so that when we receive the news, we can open the project. and we can make modifications on this basis and send it to the client. The customer only needs to import the project. Check the box to restore dynamic data sources. To complete the data source connection without repeatedly replacing the data source. Third, the editor of Wings engine for importing project files must have a package that matches the project. For example, if we are working on a project, the project uses three-dimensional components. If we send this project file to the customer's account needs a professional version package. Fourthly, the editor of Wings engine for importing deployment files must be consistent with the project code of the exported file. If the project codes are inconsistent, the deployment file cannot be imported. Fifthly, the editor of the Wings engine for importing deployment files. The main account must be consistent with the editor's main account must be consistent to imports. For example, suppose there is a main account A and 3 sub-accounts, and account B with 3 sub-accounts. If the main account A or any of its sub-accounts exports a deployment file to customer C, when customer C exports the deployment file to modify the deployment file, only account A and its sub-accounts can import it, and the sub-accounts of account B cannot import this deployment file. Okay, that's all for today's tutorial. Thank you all.